Well, hey everyone, it's time for Geocache Talk. Whether you're at work, in the car, wherever you are, we hope you enjoy the show. Please give it a like and subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher, Pocket Cast, TuneIn Radio, or Google Play. You get all the weekly Geocache Talk goodness. Big thanks to the Travel Bugs for the music and our patrons, Demon Hunter 2, Aggie Jedi Master, Electric Water Boy, Joshua the Geocaching Vlogger, Nick at Cashly, One Kind Word, Ravenclaw Tia, Shermanator 18, Butterfly Girl, Loon Trackers, the Aussie Geocacher, Sodak Zach, the Deadliest Cachers, Terrell 2, Neil Moore, Molly the Geocaching Dog, Team D&D, Geocaching Adam, Peachy 1276, the No Code Geocachers, Curiosity Girl, Tick Magnet, Marsipanic, Bricker John, Fire Safe, FS Abero, Geo Rick, Cache Addict Mel, Geocaching Janji, the Geocaching Junkie, Sir Drumalot, Janice, Tricassius, Tom Frey, Rugels, the Bruce Zero, EGK PBR, Casamaya, Master Sergeant USMC, and our new patrons, Little Gears, and Albedo 0.39. I always laugh at that last one. That's a crazy geocaching name. Albedo 0.39. There's a good story about that. If you'd like to become a patron, head on over to patreon.com/geocache talk for more details. Patrons get path tags, coins, other geocaching swag during the year, as well as invites to special events only for patrons. And we just had one of those this past Wednesday, and it went really well. Oh, and we got somebody. What's going on here? We got somebody who just joined the show. Looks like it's Jesse. Jesse, what's going on tonight?
I am in Woodward, Oklahoma, doing some research for our show in 2 weeks, the road trip show.
Oh, excellent.
So, my crazy caching buddy here, Bearsaur from Colorado.
Excellent.
You can see behind me, there's a big W feature there.
Yeah.
It's virtual. So we decided to do some research for our upcoming show. We've gone 1,400 miles so far in the last couple days.
Wow.
Found 600 caches, 30 counties, and we got about 12 hours of driving left before we get back to Colorado.
That's
We're
incredible.
We're going to drive through the night, but we've learned a lot, and we learned that rental car companies should not rent to geocachers.
That's for sure.
They're going to lose more than their $90 on this one. But, a lot of stuff that we didn't even know from our past trips.
Cool.
So we should have some good information for a couple shows from now. But it's very cold out here, and I just wanted to check in for a minute. And we are at a virtual right now, if you can see it.
Yes, we can. Is
that's already come by in this little small town once, so we're not going to stay out here very long.
Right.
They come back around.
Now, is that a new virtual or is that an old one?
No, this is an old virtual. It's been here for a long time. It's actually pretty cool. It's a time capsule and a big statue based on some history stuff from here. But I'm not going to give it away. But yeah, pretty cool. And we're 3/4 of the way through this road trip. So
wow,
hate that we can't join tonight for the full time, but we're kind of in the middle of nowhere. So
well,
I mean, no disrespect to Woodward, Kansas. I mean Woodward, Oklahoma.
Yeah, Oklahoma.
We've been in a bunch of states recently, so I get kind of confused.
It's a small town. Well, go ahead.
I just wanted to jump in real quick and say hey, and I'm looking forward to. I'll try to get in the chat room if possible, but we're pretty much in the middle of nowhere. So
right,
it's the only service I've had for a while. So
you can take
good luck and have a good show, and we'll get out of here and bring all the information back for 2 weeks from now.
All right, sounds good. Thanks, Jesse.
All right, talk to you later.
All right, bye-bye.
Yeah, he isn't kidding. That is kind of out in the middle of nowhere. I'm looking at it on the map. They do have a Hampton Inn there. I mean, they can't be that small.
They're not too bad.
They have La Quinta and a Hampton Inn and a Candlewood. All right.
Perfect.
That's not water park. Let's not go there.
Well, they have a water park. Oh, that'd be great this time of year.
right. This is perfect. Being in January for the show. Yeah. So good having Jesse on. Well, let me round that out by also introducing Sydney to the show.
Good evening, everyone.
Thanks, Sydney, for being on and we're sad to see you go. We're so thrilled you're able to join us for one more time.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. And then we're going to jump right into show 84 for January 28th. As a welcome back to the show, Chris Ronan, aka Rock Chalk, and her first time on Geocache Talk, actually her first time on a podcast, Nicole Gendro.
Hi. Good to
Welcome
be here.
to the show. Yeah, well, thanks for you guys being on. I really appreciate this. We'll talk later about Chris's first time on the show. It was an interesting discussion we think we had. But first, we're gonna get some news, and if you guys would feel free to jump in and comment when we go through the news events. So don't feel like you're excluded. This is sort of all four of us can talk about them, and we're gonna start with the first one, which is. This weekend we did the Australia Day events this past weekend, which I've heard some cool stuff about what people have done during this time. They made Australian sort of regional treats that were done that usually are eaten in Australia, and I've heard a lot of cool things that were done. And hats off to you guys at geocaching.com for come up with another one of those. What do we call that? What's I guess it's where Signal comes to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess Signal events. Yeah,
we're in the world of Signal.
We're in the world of Signal.
Signal, which is a great idea because it really does get to highlight. Like last year we did Canada. This year was Australia. Was there some others I'm forgetting?
There was Germany as well.
Was there? Okay. Yes. Yes, which was around here in Texas. There was events for that, and people are like, "Why are we doing an event on Thursday?" So that was fun because we got to all sort of experience these different things. I like that. That was a cool idea. Chris, I assume that was your idea.
Yes. All good ideas here emanate from me, and anything that's bad is Nicole's idea.
You weren't supposed to tell that.
No, that's the marketing team that tries to come up with various promotions that we will enjoy doing, and it also the Signal campaign it also shines a light on some of the other countries in the world, and like with Germany, a lot of people, what's Donnerstag? So they go and they learn a little something about it.
I learned about it. I didn't.
She's from there, and she still learned something.
Oh, sweet.
And
yeah.
And so yeah, like what we've seen is that with a lot of these events, like just using Australia as an example, you're seeing people working facts and figures into their cache pages and just trying to learn something about the country that they can work into the event somehow, which is really neat to see.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Something we talked about before the show was the fact that one of the things that Geocache Talk really prides itself on and really works toward is to really give our international people sort of the different international flavor. We've had on people from many different countries, Norway, and we have our Aussies that are down there that we had them on recently to talk about Australia and kind of preview this event. But something I've missed and I need to go back to when we were talking, you were talking about Nicole being on the show, where she's from. Let's step back a minute. Chris, if you would introduce Nicole and everything and what she does, and she can tell us what everything about that. So let me step back. Go ahead.
Yeah. So this is Nicole. Nicole, what do you? I'm not sure what you do here. What is it? No, Nicole's awesome. She joined us 2 years ago?
2.5 years ago.
2.5 years ago, as part of the community volunteer support team, and is a native of Germany. And I forget how many languages she speaks. So,
awesome.
Ask her how many languages she speaks, and then she can just take it from there. Is it 5?
Yeah. Tell us a little about yourself, Nicole.
Is it 5 languages?
Yes.
5 languages. It's crazy.
I'm working on Spanish. It's gonna be
Spanish isn't even one of them. It's like
right.
Yeah, so I'm originally from Germany, born and raised, but my mom is actually from Russia. So I spent a lot of my time as a child in Russia with my family there and my grandparents. And so I grew up with 2 languages already. So I had that head start.
That's awesome.
And
what are the 5 languages, Nicole? Because people
okay, so it's English, German, Russian, French, and Mandarin Chinese.
What?
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
Yeah, I always had a affinity for languages. I was always interested in it. And when I didn't have good grades in French, my parents were like, let's send you to a host family in France. And the host family ended up being half Chinese, half Vietnamese. And I was like, this is awesome. So I started learning Chinese characters. And then I ended up studying it in university. And I lived in China for a little bit and worked there before I met my husband in Shanghai. And he's from the United States. And so we both moved to Seattle 3 years ago.
That's awesome. Yeah. I don't know. Peter with IB Geocaching he's actually putting stuff in the chat room that I can't even read. So you're gonna have to translate.
He goes to Kiev a lot, so that I think that must be Russian or something.
Yeah, it looks Russian from the and so
I have no idea what it says.
Yeah, you're gonna have to Peter just put in the chat room what those. It looks Russian, so that's great. So
so having somebody with all of this language ability, I mean, it's really fantastic for Geocaching HQ, and especially Nicole being on the CVS team when she joined us added so much because most of what we get with appeals and so forth is in English, but Germany is obviously a huge geocaching country, and it's so important to. I mean, yeah, you can use Google Translate, but that only gets you so far. I mean, it's so valuable to be able to have somebody that can truly understand the stuff, the nuances of any kind of communication. So we tend to, I think, maybe overload her every so often with but now we have another Sven who has been in our visitor center for the last year or so. Sven is now joining the appeals team as well. So we'll have a couple of people in there every day that are German natives, which is really helpful. But beyond that, now Nicole has recently moved to become the lead of the CVS team, which is really awesome, and it just kind of speaks to how much she has added to the company over the last 2.5 years. And she's a huge cacher too. How many now? How many have you found?
Well, it's 26 more since yesterday. So
that's awesome.
I'm somewhere over 1,800 now.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly where.
Oh, yeah. She like came in today and she was like, "Yeah, I was out with mountain bike all day," and I'm like, "God, I feel lazy now. I wasn't out. I wasn't doing enough, But no, it's not only great that she brings all these skills, but she's really passionate about caching, which is really great.
And let's talk about that. Stop talking about me.
Yes. So it was privet, which I guess means hello.
Привет. Yes.
Привет. Yeah. So
Привет всем, которые по-русски говорят.
Whoa.
There you go.
Slippery slope, Gary. We're going to be. This whole thing is going to be in Russian before too long.
That's fine.
Be real careful here.
Yeah. Well, I have to have her back on. We do a whole show that way. We'll have a great time. Yeah. Very cool. Well, thanks, Nicole, for being along to tackle some of these questions that we're going to get to. And we're going to get to them here in a second. I just want to mention a couple things real quick in our notes. We have a new blog post. We have a new blog manager. So Angie, she goes by Geocaching Janji because with her husband, it kind of is a name put together. But go check out on Geocache Talk in the blogs. Go read her first one that she wrote her first, and then she's just going to kind of manage it from then on. So she might write more, but if you'd like to be a blog writer or blog participant with us, you can send us an email, geocachetalk@gmail.com, and we'll get you in touch with her, and you could help with you could submit a blog, and we could have that on the website as well. And it'll be in the show notes, but we got some AMS Travel Sales is one of our other sponsors. They're having a Savannah, Georgia weekend, St. Patrick's Day special that's going on. And the cool thing about AMS Travel Sales, one of our sponsors, is that he's an avid geocacher, and so a lot of his trips and cruises are all very heavily incorporated into the tour and the travel and the geocaching. So we really appreciate them being on board. And then the FTF magazine came out this week, so check that out. Keith is one of our FTF magazine is also one of our sponsors, and they have some cool stuff in here about trackables, something we talked about earlier about. So anyway, enough of all that. Let's get right into the questions, because that's what people are here to do and here to ask some of them. But before we get to the new questions, we want to kind of look back a little bit at last year. And we want to start with something that we all have questions about, Chris. And so I think this is going to be a good conversation. But last year we had the Friend League came about, and very cool. From our perspective, we talked about it on the show quite often about it, and I think the consensus, right, Sydney, is I think we all liked it. I think we all liked the concept, and it was something new, which we always like. But from geocaching.com's perspective, how do you feel like the Friend League went?
Well, we think it went really well. I mean, just based on the feedback that we've gotten from the community,
right?
Friend League, it actually started off as a very small project. It wasn't something that was kind of on the big roadmap, and it just kind of came up as something that somebody worked on, and we just wanted to put it out there and see what people thought of it. And then once we knew, I mean, you hate to put a whole lot into something and then find out everybody hates the concept of it, and
right,
and then have to pull it all back. I mean, we've had to, you think about not challenge caches, but challenges. I mean, stuff like that, where you put a whole lot of work into something, and whole teams work on it for months and months, and then it just doesn't land. And so Friend League started off as more of a small project. We said, okay, let's put it out there and see if we can work it into one of the promotions, which we did with the whole Mary Hyde thing last summer.
Yeah.
And people seem to really like it. And so now our teams are chatting about what the next steps are with that. And what I would say is that people should keep an eye on the geocaching newsletter here in the next several weeks, because I think you'll probably see something related to Friend League before too long.
Oh, very cool. Yeah. Because one thing was kind of, I don't think you guys even mentioned it, but what was interesting is that it kept hanging around. So it's like, ooh, it's still here. It's like, what are we going to do with it now? This is really cool. So it's kind of, without saying anything, it kind of, for us, it kind of gave us more of a, sort of a mystery of, so what are we going to do with it this time? And, so that was kind of fun. But, even last year was kind of another kind of interesting thing was if you completed Mary Hyde, and I love, and I think we actually talked about this on the first show we did together, but the summer promotions or the summer events have been a lot of fun. I've really enjoyed all the different ones that we've done. But last year's actually came with a prize. You actually got something other than, souvenirs, which I love the souvenirs. As I've said before, Susan loves the souvenirs because you don't have to dust them. So, but this last year, you actually had like a physical prize giveaway, little. So do you feel like was that a one-time thing, or do you think it might occur again?
Well, I think everything's on the table. Okay. The way the marketing team looks at things is they run one of the promotions, they look at the engagement numbers, they just, is it something that people enjoyed? And if it is, you try to take the aspects of it that worked, and hopefully try to work it into something in the future. And one thing that they're very sensitive to is not just doing the same thing over and over again. I can't give details about it, but I've seen some stuff about a project that's coming up here that I think is really cool. And and I'm not one to just say stuff's really cool. I mean, there are times when I think stuff's just, it's okay, it's fine. But this one I'm actually kind of intrigued by. So I think I think they've been doing a really good job of coming up with stuff that hopefully appeals to as wide of a range of people as possible. And that's one of the trickiest things about doing geocaching promotions. As you guys know, the community is such a wide spectrum of interests, and craziness levels vary. I mean, some people are off the charts. Some people are more sane about how they play. So what our folks try to do is find something that can appeal to as far across that spectrum as possible.
Yeah, that's a tough. I always think about that. It's got to be a tough challenge because whatever you guys do, somebody's going to hate it, just because of the fact that it's huge, And so you just have to live with that, and you have to kind of I know, Chris, you guys go through this. What appeals to most, and that kind of as far as a wrap up to Friend League is, we had one other question that came in actually today, which was this idea that. Is there a chance that maybe not necessarily this summer, but in some of these type of activities, has there been discussion or thought about trying to broaden the expanse of it so that somebody like our buddy Sodak Zach, who's just crazy competition man, or Jesse's really big into competition, to make like levels, like the summer fun thing could be like there's an easy level, there's a moderate, and there's a hard level. Is there some thought to maybe trying to give it more of a sort of level type thing?
Yeah, I mean, I know that's something that they definitely talk about, and how it'll work out in the future, I can't say for sure. I just know that is part of the conversation. Again, there's kind of that fine line. You want it to be something that is attainable for people. You don't want to put something out there that only the really hardcore people can get. Sure. But at the same time, you also want those people to have something of a challenge too. So, I know it. I mean, it really is always part of the conversations, and it's one of those challenges that the marketing folks, who are the ones that are usually the lead on these summer promotions, it's definitely one of the things that they're always talking about.
Okay, very cool.
And last year we saw the virtual rewards. That was something I totally did not even see coming. It was like, I got the email that day that these things are coming out, and I was like, whoa, I didn't even see this coming. What has been the reaction of people with the new virtual rewards?
We've seen a lot of excitement around it, a lot of good reactions. People are definitely seeing kind of like that the new ones are like very quite good examples of virtual. So with the new set of guidelines that came with that, I think that allowed people to focus on creating really exciting things. And so far,
and I think too that when somebody received one of those virtual rewards, that there's a feeling of almost responsibility that you want to use this for something really good and not just a very basic thing. So we're seeing some very creative stuff, and as Nicole said, some really interesting stuff around the world, which is really cool.
Right, very cool.
So far there's been, I think, about 1,100 out of the 4,000. So not even quite halfway. I think basically because of what you just said, Chris, people are trying to come up with something really creative. I know a lot of the people in my area that got one, they haven't done it yet because they're just trying to figure out what they want to do. Is there any sort of reminder going to happen? Because once the year runs out, you just can't do anything with it anymore. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. There will be a couple of reminders. There will be one probably around February, mid-February, which will be about 6 months since the announcement. And then there will be another one later in the year. And what that will be is that there will be a note posted on the cache page, which will trigger a notification to those people that own those listings. And so, they'll have a couple of reminders that time is starting to run out a little bit,
Right.
and that they need to get on it. And the other factor, that project was announced August 24th, I think, was of last year. So it was smack in the middle of late summer, early fall, and now it's winter here in the Northern Hemisphere, and a lot of folks are hibernating from caching a little bit. So I think we'll probably see a little bit of a run on those come springtime, at least here in the Northern Hemisphere.
And maybe a little more, adventure caches where you have to like climb a mountain, or these kind of trips that maybe people do rather in the spring and summer, and because they have to visit those locations to get the coordinates now. Yep. They maybe put these kind of trips up.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's good, because one thing we did notice is there are some difficult terrain and difficult virtual caches that have been added. So I think that's kind of cool to give it a variety, not just the same thing. So I think you're right, Nicole. I think we're going to see people who are like, oh, I want to go. I think I want to do this virtual cache, but we can't get to it right now, kind of thing. So very cool.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any plans to maybe add additional virtual rewards to more people, or no?
There's nothing set in stone right now. Either way, I think, want to see how this thing plays out through the course of the full year before deciding what might happen in the future. But I think that when we announced it, we said, hey, you never know what might happen in the future. Mm-hmm. We have an ongoing goal to try to continue to encourage great cache ownership and quality caches and all that stuff. And this was one small way to try to recognize some of the top hiders around. So if we get to the end of this and we feel like it's gone well and that people have enjoyed it, then, who knows, maybe we could do something like it, or something that incorporates pieces of it in the future.
Mm-hmm.
Very cool. As I kind of mentioned earlier, Chris was gracious enough to be on my show number 7. So I'm sure Chris was like, well, we'd been on before with Cache Release. So it's kind of, it was fledgling, and I really appreciate Chris jumping on. It's like, it was neat because we did a recorded show, and I encourage everybody who hasn't heard it yet. That, in my opinion, was a great show. We do this every week, so not every show is maybe fabulous. I kind of think they're pretty good, but that one I really enjoyed because it was fascinating to hear you going to Brazil to the Project Ape Cache, and I don't know if it was just a fun conversation about the whole process you went through, and I mean that's still something somebody could do. And I think you gave a lot of good tips on that trip. One of them being, of course, when you get down there, don't forget to change your filters, because if you start to walk out to the cache and you can't see it on your GPS because you filtered it out. So
I'd forgotten about that until you just said that. I remember walking on the trail. We had, we stayed in a little cabin there at the park, and it's like a mile walk from the cabin to the Ape Cache, and like halfway there, and I pulled up my GPS, and I'm like, where is it? I don't have it I don't have the listing on my GPS. And so fortunately, the guy I was with, who is a geocaching volunteer, he's one of the forum moderators, he lives in Brazil. He had been there several times. Right. So he's like, well, I think I can get us to the general spot, which he did, and then we found it. But yeah, that was almost a really embarrassing moment.
It's even worse than a pen.
Right.
Right. No pen. Yeah, that'd be my luck. But brings me to my question, though, is when we did that show, we had no idea yet that we would even have the possibility of a resurrected Project Ape Cache. So how did that and again, we don't want, we could spend hours on this topic. I understand, but give me sort of a brief viewpoint from you guys as far as how you thought that the process went of resurrecting the Tunnel of Light Ape Cache.
Well, from our standpoint, it went extremely well. We wanted it to be something that the community was involved in deciding what would happen with it once it was rediscovered. It's a big decision to unarchive a cache that had been an archive for as long as that one had. It was a pretty big exception to make, and we wanted the community to be on board with it. We had a pretty good idea that they would be, but
right.
But we still really wanted it to be a decision that was made not just by HQ, but we wanted the community to have a voice. And then once it was reactivated, the 8 mega was just super exciting to see how pumped people were to be finding that cache. It was, and even since then, I was just looking at the logs today on that cache page, and people are still going out there in the snow, which is more than I think. I'm not sure if I would be doing that or not, but
you would.
I probably would, but yeah. So I think it's been a win-win all around. I think people have really enjoyed it, and like you said, if hopefully folks are still going to be going down to Brazil too, because that's a whole different experience. And even with there being the reactivated one, there's still only 2 of them in the whole world. So I have a feeling that a lot of people are still going to be making their way down to
Sao Paulo?
to the one outside of Sao Paulo.
Yeah, and just incredible. Yeah, but yeah, just it was a fascinating process from our perspective, was be able to vote and kind of watch the kind of debate. Should this come back? Should it not come back? And so forth. So it was fun from our perspective as well. So. So we're going to get to some guideline questions. We're kind of moving forward now, and we're going to ask different ones, and we'll see how this goes. So one of them is about geocaching containers and physical stages of different caches must be at least 0.1 miles, 528 feet, or for those in different parts of the world that you would use meters, which is probably the rest of the world for the most part. It's 161 meters apart. Are there any plans or discussions to lower the Hyde radius to half what it is right now?
It has been discussed. I mean, the radius is discussed and has been over the course of years. There aren't any imminent plans to lower it. Of course, we know that there are places where saturation is such that it would really be helpful if it was dropped to 80 meters or 260 feet, whatever. Right. But there is also a lot of benefit to having that radius be where it is, especially as we have discussions with land managers all over the world, especially the ones that aren't necessarily familiar with geocaching. Sometimes they'll look at the map and they'll be kind of blown away a little bit by how many caches are in their park or on their lands that they manage. And it's really beneficial to them to know that there is some sort of there's this thing that's in place to keep these crazy caches, again, from their standpoint, these crazy caches from totally overtaking the area that they own or manage. So there is a lot of benefit to it the way that it is, but certainly it's one of those things that we're going to continue to be mindful of and keep having that discussion. You never know what might happen over time, but as of right now, there are no plans to change that right now. Okay,
well, good. I think from us that are sort of a pro lower it because of various reasons, for me locally, it'd be nice if we could. There's some places I think would be, since I have the parks department in my town who encourage it, I've kind of got the opposite problem. It's like, can y'all put more caches in these parks? It's like, well, I can't. I can only fit so many. So but I appreciate that you guys are at least kind of keeping that as a discussion point. So.
All right, our next question is from Jesse because he really loves Where I Go caches.
Loves
where I goes. He wanted to make sure we asked this question. In the guidelines, there's a note about Where I Go posted coordinates must be the same as the start at coordinates on whereigo.com cartridge or within 2 miles of the final for Play Anywhere and reverse cartridges. Basically, Jesse's question is, he wants to have a Where I Go where the hike is more than 2 miles. So he wants to like start at the bottom of a mountain and then you have to hike 2.53 miles up a mountain, but it won't let him do that because of this restriction.
So when we tested that out actually, because the website right now doesn't restrict that.
Because he was having trouble with it because it wouldn't let him, work with the waypoints or whatever. It just wouldn't let him. I don't know if it was just a bug on the website or what. I don't know all the details because Jesse's not here, unfortunately.
Yeah, and you might, because like Nicole said, we had looked into that a little bit and tried messing around and couldn't get it to restrict us. Yeah. So you might have Jesse write in. He could write it to attention of me or Nicole, and we could try to help him troubleshoot it to see if we can figure out what might be going on there.
If he tells the steps he's doing, or like screenshots are helpful, but if he just like writes what problems he's running into, we can look into that and find out what's going on there.
Jesse, if you're listening, I hope you are.
And I think that's a good segue. I'm gonna move a question up a little bit because it kind of fits in this little spot. But something we kind of talked about before the show, and it's come up, I think, in people I've talked to. And so, Chris, if you would kind of, or even Nicole as well, the preferred process, if you disagree with, say, how a cache is either created or published, or any kind of disagreement, I think people are kind of maybe either confused or not sure whether what they should do, or can they appeal, and what the process, I think, is helpful if you guys kind of explain it maybe a little bit more about that.
So is the question if someone finds a cache and they're wondering about it? Or
no, I think the question is if you're submitting a cache for publication and the reviewer, there's a disagreement and you come to an impasse, do you have a process for arguing that?
Right.
Yes. So
no, we don't. I'm just kidding. Yes, we do. Okay,
I know.
So anyone can write to appeals@geocaching.com or go to our help center and fill out the form and select the category appeals. Mm-hmm. And that comes to our team, and we look at each email individually, and each situation is kind of unique. Like it's not possible generally to answer very broad questions. What if this, like, it always depends on the region, the situation, and like how is the cache set up. And so when COs have come to an impasse with the reviewer, they can write into us, and then we will either decide, is this something that like we can give an exception on, or is there maybe some recommendation we can give how the cache design can be changed so that it does fit the guidelines. And then we kind of work with the CO and the volunteers to find an agreement that hopefully everyone is happy with.
Yep. Yeah, and there's what, 6 of us that are in there every day. 7? 7?
Chris,
I don't know.
Nicole
there's
right
a number
now.
Of us. There's a number of us in the room, and you know, however many it is.
Right.
It's not just me and Nicole. There's more than just us, and so we can have a just, you know, there are often differences of opinion even within our group as we look at things and try to hash it out and figure out how to interpret the guidelines, because it isn't always black and white. There is a lot of gray in the guidelines, and ultimately the goal is to get a cache published. So I know some people are leery of appealing because they're worried that, oh, you know, I don't want to make the reviewer feel bad or whatever, but reviewers want things to be done correctly, and they want to see caches published too. So most of the time it's an educational experience for them as well. And yeah, so there's definitely that outlet for people if once they've gone as far as they can with the discussion with the reviewer, and they both have decided we're at an impasse here, then the appeals process is there for you.
Right. So I think and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the idea is you need to have that discussion with the reviewer. And I think I've noticed over the years that there seems to be more dialogue that you can have with the reviewer and kind of go back and forth a little bit about discussion. And then I kind of look at it as more of a, I'm not trying to go over the reviewer's head. Maybe I'm trying to appeal to that person and saying, is this an okay time at this point? Can we go ahead and can I go ahead and put the, make an appeal, kind of get them on board in a sense to say, you know what, I'm not going to go over your head, but I do want, is it at a point now where I can go ahead and ask for maybe another set of eyes to look at it? Does that make sense?
I mean, that would be a much better way than the alternative, which is sometimes,
right?
Which is, you're totally wrong about this, I'm going to go to appeals, and it's just chill out. Let's just all be adults here, and
oftentimes we take that initiative and say, hey, it looks like we can't come to an agreement. Here's the email address, or here's how you fill out that form online, and let's just send this to headquarters. Yeah,
and sometimes you'll see reviewers say, gosh, you know what, this is such a unique situation. I've never seen this before. I'd really like to hear what the appeals team thinks about this. So yeah, it can be it doesn't have to be a lot of animosity. It can be a really healthy process, and it can be something that helps us to, again, look at something that's in the gray and try to come to some sort of a consensus on how to go forward with it.
Right. Very cool.
All right, we got a couple questions about events. In the new guidelines, there's a rule about events can't be held in or near transportation centers such as airports, cruise ship ports, or train stations. I think people are looking for a clarification on what is near, like how far away from, the cruise ship port do you really have to be to have an event there? Because, I know a lot of people go on these cruises and there's not a lot of caches near where they go, so they'd like to have an event. So maybe you could clear this up a little bit for people.
I think looking at the reason why this guideline is in place helps with understanding what near might mean, because it is different for what kind of transportational terminal is it, and in which area it is. Like a subway could be seen as a transportation terminal, just as an airport, and they're very different. And so part of the reason is can be security, like at airports, if there's an icon on the map and a security person from the airport sees it, they could be worried what that might mean. I don't know if I explained that very well.
No, I mean, certainly airports are oftentimes kind of on one end of the spectrum, and then because most airports are not great places for geocaching events.
Absolutely.
But you might have a train station that also isn't a great place, but then there could be a train station, like Nicole being from Europe can probably speak to the fact that oftentimes train stations, there are restaurants and places where people get together, and it could potentially be an okay place for, and not just maybe a good place for a geocaching event. So it does vary quite a bit.
And events are supposed to be social. They're meant for geocachers to meet other geocachers. And if someone is doing an event at an airport or a train station that is out of town, then who but travelers will go there? So it's not a good, the intention in that case is in most cases not to actually get people to attend, but we've seen situations in the past where someone will try to do an event at every single train stop, for example, where they go just to get the smileys on the map.
Right.
And that is not in the spirit of the event guidelines that encourage the social aspect of geocaching.
I agree. I totally see the airport thing, because I've been in lots of airports and they're really strict, at least here in the US. And even if you're looking a little funny, then you're gonna probably get in trouble. But But I've heard a lot that the train stations in Europe are actually popular places to have events. Like they host a series of events there throughout the year, and there's restaurants and there's, you know, people milling around. And so I think, you know, you got a couple different ends of the spectrum there. It really depends on, it sounds like what the specific area is. And so it would be up to a reviewer in that case, correct?
Yeah, it's up to the reviewer to know the area and to be able to make decisions that are right for that area. Like you said, there are going to be places in one part of the world where a train station is totally different than a train station in a different country or in a different part of the world. So there is some flexibility there. Those guidelines are there to again, guide people, but they can't be black and white and apply to every situation in the whole world. It's just there's going to be some regional differences for sure.
Right. I mean, really, in this case, and I agree now with what you've said. I think in this case, it was probably good that it was sort of left a little ambiguous, because in this particular case, there is the possibility of there being regional differences, like you said, Chris.
Okay, and recently, events are now required to be a difficulty 1. There's been quite a bit of conversation about this. I think mostly in regards to CETO events, where you're doing maybe a more strenuous activity, like, say, building a bridge. So what's the thought of you guys about a CETO event in that case, where you are doing something more difficult?
I think the way we see it is, if you attend an event or a CETO, you get the smiley, you get the attended log for attending, not for the activity necessary. And often these kind of activities are optional. Like, if I didn't bring my hammer and I can't participate in building that bridge at that CETO, can I still find log in attended? I can. So this is kind of the reasoning behind the D1.
Yeah, I mean, for events in general, and CETOs fall under events, the difficulty is in finding the cache, finding the event. And finding a CETO is not difficult. It's
right.
That's why it's a 1. And I'm a fizzy hound, and I understand that screws with some stuff. I understand.
Yeah.
That. But again, yeah, it's about the difficulty of finding it from our perspective. So that's why that 1 difficulty thing became part of the cache submission process.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right, we're getting through these. We're doing good, I think. We got the chat room is going crazy on lots of different topics, and as you can imagine, even in our little group, we've got don't change the radius, and the other people are change the radius. No, change the radius. So we've got some people going back and forth about that, which is fun.
Welcome to our world.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, somebody was mentioning about reviewers allow, and this is something that I think, and Chris, I'll have you and Nicole kind of comment on, is that they're asking about around megas and now gigas. We have now a giga about to come out in the US, but even around the world with the megas and the gigas, there are events that are planned either by the person who's or the committee that's in charge of that mega, or other people who are trying to sort of create additional events, and not necessarily to try to just get another smiley, but they're actually trying to create something additional that may be a good idea. But is that something that should, if you're planning something around a mega or a giga, what is the process that is the process just the same, or is there something they should do? Should they contact the mega owner, or what do you guys think?
I don't have the guidelines in front of me. I believe it's the day before and the day after a mega. And
the day off has restrictions.
Yeah. Where it's generally the organizing committee that has the kind of the first option to have an official side event of some sort. And, one of the big reasons for that is before we had any kind of guidelines around that, you would go to a mega and there might be, a half dozen events the day before, or maybe the day of. You'd have lots of people setting up side events. There was really no order to it. And what we ended up getting a lot of emails about were from, one of the examples that I remember was there was a restaurant that had no idea that there was going to be an event at their restaurant
not good
the day before a mega event, and several hundred people showed up at 7 o'clock on a Friday night, and they weren't expecting it, and that's not great for the game.
No, not good at all.
And that wasn't a one-off deal. That's the kind of thing that would just happen because people want to have fun. I mean, there's no malice intended. I mean, people are setting up events because people like events. So that was part of the reason why we wanted to put that in the hands of mega organizers so they could say, okay, let's try to do this in a way that the venues are the right venues for these side events, and that they fit in with what's going on with the mega event as a whole. And so that's why some of those quote unquote restrictions came into place. I mean, it's not something where we want to ruin everybody's fun. It's where there have been real world examples of issues that were caused. And so therefore we try to find a way to deal with those.
Right. That makes sense. Yeah. We're going to switch topics, I guess, a little bit right now. We're going to go over to the whole challenge caches. I remember the whole process and listened to you, Chris, a little bit, talk about, I think we even talked about this a little bit on the show 7, but the whole, moratorium on challenges, and then challenges were brought back. And, how do you feel like that now that we're kind of down the road now a little bit into the new challenges, how do you guys feel like it's gone? And do you feel like that, has there been any discussion about like maybe an icon for challenge caches, or how is that whole process kind of going? Has there been more discussion about challenge caches and what we should do, or?
Well, what I would say from HQ's perspective, because the appeals was a big part of it.
Right.
The number of appeals that were caused before the moratorium, I think we can say confidently that they have generally decreased since the new guidelines came out, which is very positive. What's going to happen is, I would imagine sometime here in the next few months, we're going to survey the reviewer community and see how they feel about things, because appeals was part of it. And then another big part of it was the amount of consternation that was caused during the review process. And most of what we know right now is very anecdotal. It's certain areas where reviewers are like, yeah, things are fine, everything's going good. Other places where it's been a little bit more challenging, no pun intended.
Right.
So I think that there will be, it's going to be very important for us to get some real feedback from the reviewers before deciding, what might happen in the future with an attribute or an icon or whatever it might be. But generally speaking, there's been a lot of positive from it, I think.
Yeah, we feel, I think, Sydney, I mean, would you agree? I think from our perspective of the people we've talked to and discussions we've had on the show, I think overall, I think everybody's pretty happy.
I think challenge caches in general are kind of hit and miss. Some people love them, some people don't care for them, some people could care less. So I think it's a very kind of niche thing. But from what I've heard, Jesse has had, a lot of luck publishing new challenge caches that he likes. So I haven't published any. I don't have a great idea for one. So.
Right. Well, and the whole inputting or the whole incorporating a Project GC, I think, was also. I mean, don't you? I think you.
Yeah, that's one thing I definitely like to point out is Magnus at Project GC and all of the script writers that volunteer for Project GC. I mean, those folks have been just awesome, and I think what they've done and what they've brought to the process has been extremely valuable. And, you know, we're very thankful to them for their participation in this whole thing.
Very cool.
Yeah, the checkers have been really helpful in at least, you know, even just for me working on them. I can go in there every couple months or whatever and check it and see what days I still have to find what and all that kind of stuff. So that has been helpful for me just finding them.
Yeah, very cool. All right, I think we're gonna switch again. So Sydney, we're gonna switch over to another topic.
Yes, there was some more questions about gadget caches. Specifically, one about should gadget caches be listed as a traditional cache because it's technically at the posted coordinates, or should it be listed as a mystery cache because it involves some solving aspects to figure it out?
That is different from region to region. So some regions have the tradition of posting or listing them as mystery caches, and others do the traditional with the attribute. Mm-hmm. If questions come to us, we usually recommend doing the traditional with the field puzzle attribute because it's easier to find. You can do pocket query and find them. But in the end, if a region always lists those kind of caches as mysteries, then it would be confusing to suddenly list them as traditionals.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I think there's some confusion because a lot of times people don't want to go for a puzzle cache because they don't like solving puzzles, and then so people hiding them get the feeling that if I publish it as a mystery cache, nobody's going to come find it, and I want people to come check out my cool cache. So I think that was kind of why that question came in.
Yeah, that's a great point. And then, you know, of course, we've heard the arguments on the other side, which is I didn't realize until I got there that I was going to, you know, need a gallon of water or or a 9-volt battery or whatever the case may be. So yeah, there's definitely arguments on both sides for that. And as Nicole said, our recommendation is traditional with a field puzzle attribute, but it definitely can vary from place to place around the world.
And is there any thoughts on, so there's a field puzzle where you go to, say, a sign and you get some information in order to find the cache location. That's also a field puzzle technically. Is there any thoughts on expanding that to be a gadget cache attribute and a different kind of field puzzle attribute, or do you guys just want to stick with them being the same attribute?
You know, that's not something I don't think that's a conversation really that we've had yet. That's not to say that we wouldn't. To this point, to this point, field puzzle has worked, but as gadget caches continue to gain in popularity, who knows? I mean that's one of the things about the game, you know, is we've definitely seen a big increase in those. I mean, really, I think back to only 3-4 years ago was when they were really starting to hit. And now, gosh, there's so many creative people in the community. You're starting to see those a lot more often. So can't say what will happen in the future, but you know, right now it's just field puzzle. But who knows? You know, a few years down the road, it wouldn't surprise me if something else happens.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's a lot of, at least the chat room, there have been several comments about that they really would love to see an attribute for gadget caches. And that's something I think that, correct me if I'm wrong again, Chris, because I tend to be wrong. Isn't that something that maybe wouldn't be that difficult to add if you're just adding an attribute? Or I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not an engineer, but just in my limited conversations around, I mean, an icon is a huge engineering project. I mean, an icon,
yeah,
an icon is a very big thing. Attributes aren't quite as horrible to undertake.
But there's usually more to it than you would think. Like because it touches the database, it needs to be in the mobile app. What about GPS devices? Will they be able to support it? Like there's just all these different parts that need to be taken into account.
Right.
Yeah, I used to think, I mean, before I worked here, I thought, oh, they just create a piece of artwork and that's it. What more is there? And then you get here and you're like, oh my gosh, there's so many different places that it touches throughout the products and with API partners and so forth. So it tends to be a much bigger undertaking than people would realize.
You got all, like you said, there's so many layers. He's got, like you said, you got iPhone app creators, you got Android app creators, you've got websites, GSAC and Project GC and all these different. We had discussions one night. We were talking about difficulty in terrain. Let's just add another whole layer. Let's add difficulties up to like 8 or something. And then when you start thinking about, oh my gosh, geocache.com would go crazy because it's like, well, if it'd be kind of cool. I mean, I think the community would love to see like something that expanded, but it'd be a lot of work. I know.
Yeah, I also think what would happen to all of our stats if suddenly difficulty is 8, then 5 is no longer the most difficult one. But I found, I don't know, not as many as you, but I found a couple of D&T 5 caches, and now like my stats are completely askew. And can we adjust that? Well, will people go back and like change their difficulties on their past caches to fit the 8 scale? Like all these different layers.
Perfect from our perspective, not perfect from y'all's perspective. It's like, oh, this would be awesome. Like it changed the grids. We have the Fizzy grid would change, and it'd be awesome. But yeah, we know it'd be a little much. So
well, and one thing I do want to say too, whether it's with any technological changes, icons, attributes, whatever. When I say it's a difficult project, that's not to say that we just look at something and say, oh, that'd be difficult. No, we're not going to do that.
Sure.
It's just to say that it's a very thoughtful process. And so when we think about a new attribute or a new icon or whatever, it's something that you really have to say, okay, if we do this, we're not doing this other thing for the next few months.
Right.
So, but again, that's not to say that you say no to it because of that. It's just something that you have to think about.
Yeah. And I think people need to realize that you have to weigh this against, like you said, all your other projects, your man hours, the amount of resources that you have. I mean, it's not just flip a switch and and why can't we do this? Cause it sounds cool. But there's more to it. And, as we're kind of getting to the end of the show, and we'll go through the chat room and look for maybe some other appropriate questions. But another one was, since we kind of touched on this a little bit, Chris and Nicole, and that is, is there any possibility or discussions that have been going on about adding another geocaching type? Because I think that the virtual rewards from I didn't get one, but from a perspective of somebody from the sort of the outside looking in, is that this is really cool. I mean, this is something that it's bringing back something that at least even though the way y'all did it, I think made a lot of sense. But I don't think we've actually had a new geocache type for many, many years, and so I'm wondering if you guys feel like that there will be a point, where a new cache type makes the most sense for geocaching.com to create.
Yeah, it's one of those you can't read the future kind of a deals, but it's not that it's totally possible for sure. I mean, if the right thing comes along, the right idea comes along, then yeah, it's totally possible that if we come up with some great idea, or the community comes up with some great idea, and it makes sense to have a new cache type, then that would be extremely exciting. I think we'd be excited about it too. At the same time, we're not going to try to force a square peg into a round hole and just put out a cache type just to do it. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So yeah, if the right thing comes along, that would be super awesome, and we would be really excited about it. I don't know what it is today, but
well, we have a suggestion because we had a whole show on this, but Geocache Talk suggestion was a history geocache, a history type. But that's just our little corner of the world talking about a history cache type.
That's you're not the first person to suggest it. I mean, it's been bandied about here and there. You know, one of the models that we kind of look at that work well, the Earth Cache model, which has worked really well to have that partnership with the Geological Society, and we have wondered if there would be a possibility of partnering with a similar organization for something like a history cache.
That's kind of what we were talking. It was kind of
what that organization would be, because it's not just a matter of picking one and saying you need two to tango. You know, you need an organization that sees a benefit in it for themselves, which the GSA does, because Earth Cache is a huge part of their educational outreach. So that's why the Earth Caching program is so valuable to them, and why we've been able to have this great partnership with them over the last several years. So if we were able to find a similar organization for a history cache type, I think it's something that we'd love to talk about for sure. And yeah, so that's kind of what our stand is on that right now.
Yeah, we kind of thought the same thing. It's like, well, we would want there to be, like you said, it's sort of in the Earth Cache style, it'd be like a history cache, but then it's like, well, we have to find sort of some sort of international, because it's got to be international. It's got to be an international historical type of society. I don't know. We kind of came to, I guess, a dead end, didn't we, Sydney? I don't think we came up with one, did we?
I couldn't think of one.
We tried to come up with something like make a heritage site, but again, they're busy with their own little thing. So yeah, I agree with you, Chris. There's there's some definite challenges there, but it'd be fun. It'd kind of be fun to have something like that.
Yeah, and again, it's one of those things we would never just throw our hands up and say no, but if the right thing came along, we'd love to talk about it for sure.
And I guess another item from the chat room, and I know Jesse would, if he was on, he would love to ask this, because it's his little favorite, which is Where I Goes. And so EGK PBR in the chat room asked about where's Where I Go in relation to geocaching.com. Is there going to be an upgrade of some type to using it? I know a lot of people use other apps now. Your I Go, there's a few different ones that allow you to build the Where I Go cartridge. Is there any plans for geocaching.com to upgrade their Where I Go builder, or are they happy with things the way they are right now? Yeah, Where You Go. Thank you.
Well, yeah, I don't know if happy is the right word, but things are where they are right now, is what I would say. There are no imminent plans as of today for some big upgrade. Our focus right now is on geocaching.com. I mean, there's a lot. We love Where I Go. There's no question. And I wish we had something I've talked with Brian Roth about quite a few times over the last few years, because I love Where I Go, and he does too, and a lot of us do. But right now the focus is on geocaching, and again, it's one of those things you never know. Something might change. Maybe there's a possibility to do something with it in the future. But as of today, the best I can say is that it is what it is right now. And like I said, happy isn't the right word, but yeah, that's the best.
I went. John and I went for a couple of Where I Goes today. That was our focus.
Oh, great! Good job.
But yeah, I think at this point, it's kind of what we said about weighing things. Like, if we were to put in effort in Where I Go, it would be a lot of time and effort, and that would mean that all the other projects would have to wait. So I think at this point, the other projects are being prioritized.
Right. I think what some people are even or insinuating or suggesting is with these different ones is maybe geocaching.com could maybe kind of like what they did with Project GC. You guys didn't want to deal with like all the checker portion of a challenge cache, so you were able to use a great resource. Possibly you could, because I think people who are in the community who've been around a while know about where you go and you're all these different kind of apps, but people that don't, they go to where I go and they kind of try to use the alpha builder, and it's a little harder to use. So I'm wondering maybe, from a strategic point of view, geocaching.com sort of maybe could pick one that they feel comfortable with and sort of partner with them and sort of let them point to them maybe to do the cartridge.
Yeah, it's definitely a possibility, and it's something that I think that we've had discussions about that over time. I know that's something that Brian has worked on. Nothing has come to fruition as of yet, but it's not lost on us how much passion there is for where I go in the community among people. And there's enough of us inside the building that also have a passion for it that we keep kind of banging the drum.
Oh, good.
So, again, it's one of the things where, maybe there's a possibility somewhere down the line to make it better or to make it more accessible to people. That's kind of what I personally, just speaking for myself, what I would love to see, because you do kind of have to be a tech head to be able to find your way through the official builder. I know that there are some others that are a little easier to use, but I would personally love to see that. We'll just kind of see what happens.
See, I think the ones, the people that listen that are where I go fans, I think are just comforted the fact that you guys love Where I Goes too. So that helps.
Yeah, we really do. And
you even own one or two.
I own a couple of them, but I had somebody write them for me. I gave him the story and he wrote the cartridge. So you could do one. You're totally.
Oh, yeah.
Nicole's like into coding and stuff now, so she's I should have her write one for me.
Yeah. Learn a little Lua. Yeah, there you go.
My first reverse Where I Go today.
Oh, you did?
That was exciting.
Oh, cool. Yeah. I published one of those not too long ago. So, all right. Well, we're wrapping up tonight. We could talk again for hours. I know you guys don't want to do that, but we probably could. We could go on forever. But so I'm going to go around the room real quick. Sydney, do you have any last comments before I get to the wrap up?
No, it's been definitely interesting to have you guys on and answer all our crazy questions. So thanks for joining us.
Yep. And then Nicole and Chris, what you have any final thoughts?
Well, I am very thankful that I was invited to my first ever podcast.
Yes,
it was a pleasure. I was very nervous.
we're not. She said we had it all scheduled, and then what was it, Friday? She says, "Wait, is it video?"
I was going to come in my giraffe onesie because I know we are doing audio.
She had a costume in mind, and I was like, she was really insistent on wearing this costume, and I was like, "Are you sure about this?" And then I realized, she doesn't know this is video.
Yeah, live video to say that, but recorded, so you get to watch it over and over again. You're on forever now, so.
Right? Don't you wish you would have worn that giraffe costume?
I do, kind of.
Do you?
Yeah.
It's a missed opportunity. Maybe next time.
I know. Next time.
Cozy.
And Chris, as always, thanks for coming on.
Oh, it's always a pleasure, and hopefully we'll see each other here in a couple months down in Texas.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. Looking forward to that, and you and I sit down and talk a little bit. And again, always our experience with you guys has been wonderful, and so been very encouraging to us, and just been a good relationship. And we get to ask you guys some questions, and I think it really helps because of all the viewers get to kind of get a little bit of interaction. I know you have a podcast, and you're on some other podcasts as well. And that's the first time I saw you, I think, was on Gearheads. But I think that the fact that you guys are willing to do that and be a part. And I think over the years, I feel like that there have been such a great relationship with the people, that are involved in geocaching. And Sydney is typing a question right now. So, oh yeah, very good. Last question.
I thought we were done, Carter.
Last question. No, we almost got you out of there. Yeah, we almost got you out.
I'm curious now.
That close. It's a real quick question. That is, do you guys have any plans? I know, Chris, you have plans for the Texas Challenge, but Nicole, or what are y'all's plans for visiting a Megas and Gigas this year?
Oh, my plans aren't set in stone. I don't know if I can reveal any of the thoughts on air.
Okay.
Right
now. All right. That's fine. That's fine.
I'm just taking vacation time to go to a few different. I'm going to go to the Yuma event next month.
Cool.
Gosh, I'll tell you, living in Washington, you just want to go somewhere dry and sunny for a couple of days each month during the winter. I just try to. So it'll be Yuma and then Texas in March.
Yeah.
In April, I'll be at Moga, which isn't too far from Kansas City, which is my hometown.
Right, exactly.
Some of my old buddies are putting that event on, so I'm looking forward to going back to Nebraska.
There's 2 in Washington, 2 mega events.
Yeah, we've got Tri-Cities and the Ape
3,
event.
Actually.
GeoCoin Fest this year. So there's
GeoCoin Fest this year.
Yeah, so right there, there's the GeoCoin Fest is pretty much almost in Seattle, just right down in Issaquah.
Yeah.
I'm sure a number of us will be at Geo Woodstock in May.
I'm interested in going caching. You've been and you had good
the one in Georgia. Yeah.
Georgia. Yep.
That's an awesome event. So yeah, I even was thinking about that the other day. I was like, I wonder what airfare is to Atlanta. So yeah, there's a lot already, and that's only through the first half of the year. So
right.
And US so far.
What's that?
There was only US.
That's right. That's only that's true. Yeah. But we just had our drawing the other day we have a drawing each year to decide which employees go to which mega events for quote unquote official business.
Yeah.
So you'll start seeing a lot more folks.
We didn't win.
Yeah, neither one of us.
Oh, yeah.
So
yeah.
So yeah, we're going on our own dime when you see us out there. But yeah, so you'll hopefully see a lot more will attends being posted by staffers here on mega events, and it's just such a it's of course it's fun to go and travel to an event and whatever, but the most important part about it is to have a chance to do what we're doing right here and just talk about, hear people's ideas and hear what people like and what's maybe any frustrations they might have, and be able to bring that stuff back here. And it just helps us to do a better job on trying to create products and services that people are going to want to use.
Another aspect is when we visit megas that are outside the US to see kind of how other countries cache. That is always very, very interesting and often very different.
Yeah, we love talking to the internationals and hearing their stories about what they're doing. So, but you guys, again, thank you so much for being on tonight and for giving us some insights. And I know we peppered you with questions. I think, Chris, next time we'll schedule you some time, and we're not going to ask you any questions. We're just going to have a good old chat about just whatever. So
sure, we can do
that. We seem to have you on. We just kind of grill you, which I don't want to come across that way. But I think, I think overall, it's been really beneficial for everyone to kind of hear. And so, people are asking about, we're giving away, we did a coin giveaway last week, and we did a combination. We gave away one live and we gave one away through email. And I got a ton of email for this coin. So I was really appreciative of that. And of course, we use random.org to give away our stuff. It just makes it simpler. And somebody asked earlier, it's like, well, come on, who won the coin this week? So this week's winner is Gordon Goodall. I hope I said that right. Gordon Goodall. He goes by Velocisaurus. And he is in East Sussex in the UK. So again,
nice.
Those are international. I know, isn't that cool? So
we lost. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, y'all did not win.
Are you sure that's not pronounced rock chalk?
Yeah. No,
no luck with drawing this year.
No luck this week for you two.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we're again thankful for everybody who did send in their answers to last week's question, and I'll get that information over to Nick at Cachely, and we'll get your coins sent out. So, all right, well, coming up on the show next week is for those that are not in the U.S. and always have to remember all of our international friends. It's Super Bowl Sunday, and which becomes sort of whether you're a fan of football, U.S. football or not, and it usually becomes sort of an event. Usually there's a party involved, and even if you're like, I don't have a dog in the hunt this year, and Sydney doesn't either. I don't think Buffalo will ever get there again. But
what?
I'm just kidding.
They have to.
You had your chances. You had 4 chances. You couldn't win one, so you're done. I'm kidding. I know.
That's harsh, man.
I know that. Oh, you're back. Sorry. Yeah, we're going to do a little audio puzzle for people, kind of as a little something to provide for that week. So we're just not like, where did Geocache Talk go? They're not even on at all. We're not going to do anything live. We're going to do something for our audio listeners. And for folks that are watching the show tonight, definitely stay tuned for that and subscribe, because we are giving away a coin for whoever figures out the puzzle first next week. So all you puzzle folks, and if you're not a huge puzzle fan, I think you'd like this one because it's not too hard. I don't think so. Anyway, week after that, we're going to talk about show 85. Jesse will be back. We're going to talk about road tripping. That's what he's doing. He's been doing a lot of research for the trip for the this week. We're going to do a show about road tripping, trip planning. Week after that, we got on geocaching. Janji's going to come on, talk about blogs, books, and big skies. I like that title. So she's in South Dakota. So we get to hear a little about the Dakotas. We have a lot of fans in North and South Dakota. A lot of passionate geocachers up there. And then in 3 weeks, we're going to have a discussion about the Texas Mega, which Chris is going to make it down for show 87. So again, folks, we hope you enjoyed the show tonight. Please email us your comments at geocachetalk@gmail.com. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at geocachetalk. Mine's at Gary Slinkard, all one word. Jesse's at Memphis_Mafia. And even though this is her last show, we're very sad about this. Her Twitter is at ShermanatorGC. So Sydney, you'll be back though once in a while, right?
Sure. If you can come up with a good topic, I'll consider it.
Oh, okay. There you go. Yeah.
You stop hassling her about Buffalo, man.
I know.
Yeah, jeez.
There you go. Right there. She's off. She's done. I'm not coming back on this stupid show. And then our Facebook's at facebook.com/Geocache Talk. Show can be found on iTunes, Stitcher, TuneIn Radio, Google Play, as well as the Geocache Talk website. Don't forget to click on the subscribe button below so that you can see and hear the show on a weekly basis. And until next time, don't just talk about geocaching. You need to go geocaching. Good night, everybody.
Good night.